I want to talk about Tua and the Dolphins a little bit more, because the Dolphins are one of the more fascinating teams in the draft with all of their draft capital. And I think most mock drafts and most people's, I think the headspace is very much kind of picking off some needs, because the overall roster is good, right? They made the playoffs last year. They have all these draft picks now. And you grab an edge here and a safety there and a receiver there, because Will Fuller's only on a 1-year contract. But you keep bringing up the offensive line with the Dolphins. Do the Dolphins think that they have the offensive line, even though on paper they weren't great last year? Do they think that they're fine? Because they drafted Austin Jackson in the first round. You have Robert Hunt, who was in there. Jesse Davis as a starting tackle. You brought in Eric Flowers, Matt Skura at center. But they had 3 rookies starting for a while last year. None of them performed particularly well except Hunt. Do you keep throwing resources there?
Yeah.
We had this Rams discussion last year at this time. They looked bad on paper because of what they did the previous year. But all those guys also had like a track record of being good previous to that. The Dolphins don't right now. This could derail their season.
The argument that it's the same argument that we have when you say, look, if you go into the draft needing multiple rookies to contribute year one and be really good right away, or even just be good, period, you're probably going to struggle because the strike rate isn't that good, right? Nobody is batting even 50% on draft picks over any consistent period of time. So if you need more than one to be good and all you do is take 2 swings at it, you're going to miss, right? More times than not, because it's a 50-50 proposition. So how often are you actually hitting both those? How often are you hitting tails twice in a coin flip? So if you're Miami, you would be not playing the game correctly to say, well, we drafted a bunch of young guys. We liked all those guys. They will all come good, right? Why would they? Because it doesn't usually happen that way. And you can't possibly, well, you can. You shouldn't be arrogant enough to assume that you're different to everybody else, and just because you like these guys, they will all come good. It might just take a year. You probably missed on 1, 2, maybe all of those guys. So keep adding resources until you're absolutely certain you've nailed it. Absolute worst case scenario, or 2 absolute worst case scenarios to doing that is, 1, you end up with more good offensive linemen than you can put on the field at any one time, which is not exactly a bad place to be, right? That gives you depth, it gives you contingency if somebody gets injured, or it gives you trade ammunition for an offensive line desperate team if you end up in that situation. Or 2, you're concerned about robbing resources from another position because you've thrown so much at the offensive line. But Miami, in particular, is in this unique position of just having more resources than they know what to do with. So of all the teams in the NFL, you need to worry the least about like robbing Peter to pay Paul, and now we don't have enough picks to spend on receivers or DBs or defensive linemen. You have all the picks in the world. Spend more on offensive linemen.
Yeah, again, I'm very intrigued by adding more weapons to that Miami receiving corps. Devontae Parker, Will Fuller, and Preston Williams, plus whoever, right? But man, I did misspeak. They did not make the playoffs. They won 100 games and didn't make the playoffs, right? But I think if the offensive line doesn't develop, that derails their season.
Yeah.
And 2 is development. So it is something I think they should take a look at. The Jags, their offensive line looks okay on the interior with Andrew Norwell, Brandon Linder, and A.J. Cann. Jawan Taylor and Cam Robinson's only on the franchise tag this year. That's why I think the Jags' second first-round pick is prime real estate for another tackle, whether it's a Dylan Rayduns or a Samuel Cosme. I think bringing another tackle into the mix for Trevor Lawrence's development, because I've said how much I like their receiving corps, and as much as I always get excited when you see Elijah Moore there and you think about Trevor Lawrence throwing to him. I get excited about some of those Terrace Marshall. I think tackle's the way to go for the Jags. Yeah, and we're only talking offensive football here. Obviously, these teams have defenses to shore up as well.
Their tackles last year combined to allow 98 total pressures. Like that's half of a bad team's pressure rate in 2 players. So they could use an upgrade at either one of those spots, even if you assume that Cam Robinson, like maybe they see something in Cam Robinson, they think that this will be the year that he develops and he becomes that top-tier tackle. Okay, great. One of 2 things happens. Either you need to then stump up for a monster contract based off a guy playing well in the contract year, or you let him walk. Either way, you probably need an extra tackle because your right tackle is in pieces as well. So, yeah, there's no way that adding a tackle for them is a bad move.
Let's wrap it up with the 49ers at 3. Is this the jackpot for Justin Fields or Mac Jones or Trey Lance?
Yeah.
You're stepping into Shanahan, good offensive line, good group of weapons, assuming they all stay healthy. Potential jackpot there.
Yeah, the quarterback in Kyle Shanahan's offense in San Francisco is one of the 2 best quarterback situations in the NFL. The other one being the quarterback in Kansas City for Andy Reid and all the weapons that they have. So you would be stepping in day one to a team that is capable of going to the playoffs, and the situation as an individual position that is probably tied for the best in the NFL. So if I'm Justin Fields, I would absolutely want to go number 3 over number 2 or number 1. I don't even care about the prestige of number 1, the money, whatever. You are in a way better situation if he goes number 3 than either of the guys going ahead. This is like
it's the underrated story in the draft, right? It's not. It's where they're going to go, but
basically
it's like
everywhere Justin Fields can land is good for him. He lands in San Francisco, which is arguably the best situation of any quarterback anywhere. He lands in Denver. That's a really good situation. Incredible receiving group. Offensive line heading in the right direction. That's a good place to land. New England, an offense that's being retooled and makes a lot of sense. Washington is a playoff team headed in the right direction. And Chicago, we're a quarterback away from being a really, really good team. So anywhere that he can land, like you said, the only team that can screw it up for him is Detroit. Detroit selects him. The dude might as well pull a John Elway or an Eli Manning and just say, I'm not doing that. Figure it out. Go somewhere else. Not playing there.
But it's not just Fields. It's Mac Jones.
Right.
And it's Trey Lance. And so I think we always think about where they're going and who's going to be picked first, when the real story is going to be, what is the situation?
The 2 worst situations are the 2 that are set in stone. It's Trevor Lawrence to Jacksonville and Zach Wilson to the New York Jets. Those are the 2 worst situations.
Have a second first-round pick and a ton of draft capital to build, and so that's why
but
they
again,
can flip that.
You're not fixing it year 1.
Maybe not, but they could turn it around somewhat quickly.
Long term, there might be decent situations, but like short term, which is if you're those guys have endless amounts of rope, right? Like Trevor Lawrence is the future franchise, the unquestioned generational talent. That guy could suck for a while and still be no pressure for his job whatsoever. If your quarterback's 3, 4, and 5, the quicker you can look good, the better in terms of your long-term future. And anywhere they're going to go is a better situation than if they got selected number 2 or number 1.
So there's a world where QB 3 off the board is going to look much better than QBs 1 or 2 in the early going.
To the point where I would almost expect it.